Hi everybody, welcome to our first Feel Good Friday. So I thought to get started and try to keep these short and sweet and understandable, I think what most important topic that we could start with would be gut health, because everything starts in the gut. And I'm going to really briefly, I just jotted down some notes to stay focused and not be all over the place for you guys, but I am going to talk about probiotics and why probiotics are so crucially important to your health. I think that people have all heard about probiotics, but they get a little confused or they minimize the necessity for them. So I'm trying to make it simple yet powerful enough for you to understand and appreciate the relevance of probiotics. The idea being that let's start with your gut. Let's start to support the gut, and we're going to make our way out through the systems. But if we don't have a strong gut to start with, all the other systems are going to be slightly compromised, if not significantly compromised. Okay? So, the International Human Microbiome Consortium, it's a word, isn't it? Woo! Suggests, and this is all from nih.gov, so you can look there and you'll find all sorts of the stuff that I'm talking about today. I assume there's tons of research up there about this anyway. That consortium is now doing research and suggesting that there are more than 8 million non-redundant human microbial genes. So we have microbiome communities in our gut. And what this is saying is thousands upon thousands of different types, well, millions of different types of microbiome that are critical to our health. So this is really interesting because it is such a huge community, we cannot ignore them, and yet there's a lot of ignoring going on. So, we're not going to ignore them anymore, are we? Because this is so important. Okay, so when we have a reduced microbial diversity, meaning there are so many different strains of these wonderful, healthy, happy microbiome for us, that we need all of them to be in balance. And when we have that diversity, life is good. But when it starts to get reduced and compromised, we can have a ton of symptoms. And they classify this as dysbiosis of the gut, which I'm sure you probably have heard, but if you weren't quite clear what that meant, and it's not really a loaded term, but it's kind of very general, and it means you're having a compromised amount of the microbiome who are not at their full strength of health. And therefore there's going to be issues. And so I just jotted down a couple of issues, but these are big things. Chronic low-grade inflammation. So we could have a whole discussion about inflammation. Inflammation is huge. Metabolic disorders like diabetes and obesity. There's a lot of research now talking about the microbiome and obesity connection. IBS, general term. Irritable bowel syndrome is a totally token coin term by Western medicine because they don't quite have the time or understanding to really get to the root of what's happening for that person. But there is a root, and it isn't just some generalized irritable bowel syndrome. It's actually a very specific scenario happening and very treatable. So if you think you're under that category of I have irritable bowel syndrome, stay tuned. Eczema, skin conditions, very related to our gut health. Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, also very significant, and autoimmune conditions, because the gut health is the good bacteria are immunomodulators. They help to affect our immune system, and all of that I'm just whipping through really quickly are topics, obviously, for a separate day, each of them, because they're really very complicated, but they're very common now. That's why we're going over this. So, prebiotics and probiotics. I'm sure you've heard both terms. It's nice when you can have a combination, but you should have prebiotics in your diet. Diet is really important. Vegetables are lovely, healthy foods for so many different reasons, but prebiotics are more specific to the dietary non-digestible carbohydrates. like inulin, which you may see in some supplements. There'll be a listing of ingredients, and fructooligosaccharides. So those are also very common, added to sometimes supplements that are really important to have specific action on gut health. So they'll be adding in a little bit of those non-digestible prebiotics, because that process is basically a fermentation in our intestines, which is going to help in the production of an amino acid derived metabolites pathway. So I know that sounds ridiculous, but what that means that's so relevant to us is those amino acid derived metabolites are our production chain for things like our neurotransmitters, like serotonin, GABA. Serotonin is our happy neurotransmitter to keep us in a good mood, not a depressed, dysphoric mood. GABA is like our natural anti-anxiety neurotransmitter. So we like these guys. We want the production of this. So prebiotics are good things. It's also helping create the opportune environment for the probiotics to get in and do their things. So enhancing the integrity of the intestinal barrier, that gut lining, is so critical. We'll get into other topics when we talk about genetically modified food and how that is destroying the integrity of the gut lining. So we're very compromised at this point in time in our gut lining, and so probiotics are essential. And I listed a couple of things. What are they going to help with? They're going to help with immune tolerance and immunity issues. And a lot of folks you may know have a lot of immunity issues, especially young kids. This is really important for young people. You know, little people that are just starting out, we need a strong immune system, so let's help them with probiotics. A reduction of bacteria that could cross the intestinal mucosa, like the leaky gut syndrome. We'll talk about that too. Decrease of the irritable bowel symptoms, which usually have to do with abdominal pain, flatulence, unexplained bloating. There's an explanation. Usually we can, we can get back to what is causing it, and often it's food related, not always, or a combination of issues, but there's a reason. Inflammation, the reduction of inflammation, nutrient absorption, energy metabolism, regularity. That's that whether you're having lots of diarrhea or loose stools consistently, or you're someone who's on the constipation end, the probiotics can sort of in a comprehensive way replenish what is needed where there's deficiency, and you can have regularity again, which is really critically important. The psychiatric, neurological, mental pathways are very related. The brain and the gut are connected. They are intimately connected. We're going to talk about that really quickly. And suppression of growth of pathogens. So, we think about the resistance to antibiotics that is really becoming very frightening and real, very real, people. And they've been prescribed, unfortunately, way too generously. And people are having resistance. But when people are given antibiotics do not distinguish the good, the bad, and the ugly. And what I mean by that is we have our something like more than 8 million good, lovely, happy probiotics, good microbiome that are helping us and are keeping us strong and healthy. We have the bad, which are the bad pathogens, bacteria that we don't want in our system, and we need them out. And the ugly, this is my own interpretation, that falls into the category of the yeast candida zone, because there's a interplay of the relationship between the good bacteria, the bad bacteria, and the yeast, and we need to make sure that there's some homeostasis in there so that the bad guys don't take over the good guys. And basically that's a constant issue. Constant. Okay, so we talked about the dysbiosis, but I think what's really interesting is talking about that neuroimmunology, that idea that the immune system, the neurotransmitter system, and our gut, that there's a connection with all of that. And there clearly is, and there's a lot of documentation and research that talk about that. The enteric nervous system, which is the communicator between the gut and our central nervous system. They call it the gut to brain. It's also called the gut-brain axis. And the gut-brain axis is fascinating because it's the coordination between the brain, the intestinal tract, the endocrine system, and the immune system. So when you go to your endocrinologist and all they focus on is your thyroid, there's so much more to it. If you go just to an infectious disease doctor and they just want to focus on your immune system, there's so much more to it. Going to a neurologist and all they focus on is, well, let me see what, medication can I prescribe for you, but there's so much more to it, and they need to look more globally and holistically. All of those systems are interrelated with that connection, that communication between the gut and the brain. And so when many folks reportedly have unexplained anxieties, feelings of anxiety, some feelings of depression that they hadn't had before, or they kind of go in and out of it, not classically clinical depression or, but certainly unpleasant, and they can't quite figure out what's happening. Often the best set idea is focus on your gut, get some really great probiotics, and give it a good month. That disruption, that dysbiosis of the gut-brain axis, which we're talking about, that is, I think, really significant and a very important missing link that a lot of people don't pay attention to, has been associated with the anxiety, depression, irritable bowel syndrome often, and the relationship, in case you're interested, I'm trying to keep this simple, is the gut microbial community communicates with the production of these neuroendocrine molecules like the serotonin, the GABA, the noradrenaline, the adrenaline. All of those neurotransmitters, there's a communication happening. So when you have the dysbiosis, there's a disruption in that, so that perhaps along that pathway process, you're not getting all of the proper nourishment that one needs in order to get the production of the serotonin that does start in the gut, actually, even though it is for a neurotransmitter. So that's part of that connection. So probiotics are really, really important. You need good quality ones. You need ones that are either individually sealed, each one, so that they're still have the live bacteria contained, and or you need the ones that are refrigerated. I really appreciate Zymogen. I think they have fabulous probiotics. That's a supplement company. If that interests you, you can contact me, Lisa, Thehealthologist, at gmail.com, and I can give you more product suggestions. I think that Young Living Essential Oils Company, which has over 600 products, also has a very good probiotic, because what's unique about theirs is there's a delay release, which is really a fabulous thing. Overall, diet matters. Eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of sugars, that means alcohol and other yummy things, really disrupts that happy balance. And so you have to think about, what am I eating and what's that doing to my gut, and what's the long-term effect? Why is all of a sudden my blood sugar readings really out of whack? Why am I gaining all this weight and I'm really not feeling good and my stomach's constantly upset? There's reasons, and we need to peel the layers, but the first step is probiotics. If you have questions, you can reach out to me and I can give you a little more detail. But again, this is just generalized for everybody. Very quickly, it's Friday. And so this may sound really silly to everybody, but there's truth in this. Sometimes people are so stressed these days and rushed that they don't give themselves enough of a ritual and enough time to have a quiet, peaceful bowel movement. You know what I'm talking about. There's so many people that share this with me, that they just didn't have time in the morning. They just held it in, and then they lost the urge and move on. Okay, well, that's not safe. It's not good for you, and it's really not good for your system, especially over, the process of a couple of days. Then bam, you hit Friday and you're not feeling very good. This is what I was talking about. One of the things I was talking about focusing in on Friday and moving into the weekend. And what does that mean for you? I like sometimes to just, simple things like frankincense essential oil, peppermint essential oil, those are great for gut health. You can put them in Young Living only. I wouldn't recommend drinking any other type of essential oil company, but from Young Living, you can put it in some water, in a glass of water, and it's very good for calming and supporting the gut. And it also starts to bring you back into the moment. Essential oils have that ability to bring you into the moment, get you a little more centered, and that can be very helpful to quiet you and slow you down so that you can get back into the body and check in with the body and say, whoa, I forgot. I still have some things I need to do to take care of myself. The weekend is a good time for you to make sure you get back on a schedule, that you do put the time in your day to make sure that you take care of your body. And that sometimes means also making sure there's time for the elimination process. So my hope for you is that you will focus in a little more on your self-care. Think about your morning rituals, your weekly rituals versus your weekend rituals, what you could do differently, you could do better for you and your body, and make it a priority. And then either seek out a really good quality comprehensive probiotic, some that have prebiotic stuff as well as the pro, or just a great probiotic, and eat healthy. And let's start with the gut. Focus in on your gut this week. See what you're doing that you could do a little better. And then we'll move out from there, okay? Hope this was helpful for you guys. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.